Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the last community engagement session for our facility master plan. My name is Matt Zedeker. I'm the superintendent of Yorkville District 115. Tonight, we also have Brent Edwards, Director of Communications, Heather DeVerde, Executive Director of Facilities, and Craig Wesley, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. They'll be in the background as we are working through this presentation, collecting questions, and will be available for any questions as we go throughout the presentation. Just to kind of start and set the foundation for tonight, I want to talk a little bit about how we got here. This work started well over a year ago in terms of figuring out what the community wants and how we might be able to solve some of the challenges that we will talk about tonight in our presentation. And so we conducted over 14 listening sessions last year with the community at every single building that we have in the district. We also had some staff sessions. We took that information, and what we did is worked with a steering committee. That steering committee was comprised of business owners, community members, teachers, principals, and we had students from the high school as well. And what the steering committee was charged with was really essentially to take back the information we heard at those listening sessions and to develop options that could be potential solutions to the challenges we were experiencing. And so what you'll see tonight, and as we go through the presentation, the information that we're going to present to you derives right directly from the listening and from what the steering committee pulled together and presented to the board in June. And then the board gave permission for us to move forward with that information as we are now here in the next phase of community engagement for our facility master plan. Tonight's presentation will kind of be like a funnel. We're going to start pretty wide, and then each section we're going to get a little narrower and a little narrower to ensure that we're providing the information that you all need. There is a time tonight where you will have your voice in the room. We're going to ask you to rate options. We're going to ask you to answer questions. And then finally, we will ask you to prioritize spending. And so we will give time tonight during this presentation to do that. And we'll work through that. And at the end of the evening tonight, we'll have that opportunity to make sure that we captured your voice as we continue to truly have a community-driven plan as we look at our facility master plan. So, you know what I love about District 115 and what I think is really unique is that District 115 is really the hub of the community. The district has the opportunity to create partnerships from many different organizations and throughout our community. And those partnerships and the collaboration really embody the fact that we all are Foxes. And that is so unique about Yorkville and District 115. We also are one of the fastest growing districts in the state. There are over 800 school districts in the state of Illinois, and a vast majority of those districts, their student enrollment is either maintaining, plateauing, or actually going down. And so there are a small number of districts that are growing, and out of those districts, we are one of the fastest. I think we all know and have experienced the fact that the opportunities we provide our students, whether it be in academics, in our award-winning Project Lead the Way program, our athletics, our fine arts, our extracurricular offerings that we provide our students, our career pathway programs that our students get to experience as they enter into our high school. These are all things that large school systems provide students. But I think, again, what is unique about Yorkville and why people are moving here and why graduates are coming back home is that with that big school feel and big school opportunity, we still maintain our small town feel. And that is what really separates Yorkville and District 115 from other communities. We also have the advantage of being a unit district. What does that mean? So, well, that means we have the opportunity to welcome students into our organization as early as 3 years old. This allows us to work with students and the families from age 3 all the way through graduation to really work at ensuring a consistent experience for our families and our kids. This experience and this continued work really builds meaningful relationships as everybody funnels into one high school. And the work that we can do together really creates the opportunity for our kids to become well-rounded adults as they leave us. The collaboration's working. Our graduation rate is at 96%. That is better than our peer districts and certainly better than the state average of 88%. Not only is our graduation rate 96%, but we also have 8 of our schools that are rated commendable. Our students have won more accolades and prizes and awards than I could even begin to mention. And additionally, our staff are recognized as educational leaders in education. And so what we have are great high quality kids working with high quality staff members and faculty getting high quality results. And beyond all of the positive results that we're seeing and all the quality, I think what we really pride ourselves on in District 115 is when we have students, from 3 all the way through high school, we really get an opportunity to provide the space for kids to find their voice. And I know the professionals in our organization really value making sure that we give that space to our kids and allowing them to find their voice. And when they do, we really believe that when they graduate, they're ready to overcome the challenges that life certainly will present. Now, we're able to do all of these fantastic things, provide all of these fantastic opportunities, have the great outcomes by being one of the most fiscally responsible districts in the state. We understand tax dollars. We understand the impact that taxes have on families, and we know the value of those tax dollars. As you can see on the chart, our peer districts spend more per pupil than we do. Our district is just over $13,500 on a per pupil expenditure, while you see the state average gets closer to $20,000. And so we want to make sure that we're always trying to stretch that dollar and to make sure that we are providing value for the money that we know we receive. A couple of really good tangible examples of how we value that tax dollar is our student to administrator ratio. Our district ratio is 40% higher than the state average. What does that mean? Well, that means that our funding is getting funneled into the classroom, into students, instead of high administrative costs. We don't have a heavy district office with a bunch of administrators. We really want to make sure that we're funneling those tax dollars, those valuable tax dollars, into the classroom and into our kids. Another great example is the way that our facilities team maintains our buildings. They really work to extend the buildings well beyond a typical lifespan. And when projects do come up that we have to take on with the district, most of the time we like to try to do that in-house because we know the quality that we're going to receive from our team, but we also know that we can do it cheaper. So again, trying to extend that dollar that we receive from taxes. And I always give credit to our board and prior administration, but we work with a balanced budget and we have maintained a really responsible and healthy fund balance. This allows our district to be able to take on any rainy days or emergencies that come up in the future and be well prepared to take those on. However, we're kind of at a tipping point. Our enrollment has nearly tripled over the last 20 years. The high quality staff and what we're able to do, we're getting at a point where this is unsustainable. Every building is overcrowded with even future growth, more growth projected. And in fact, we had a demographer complete a survey just last spring to give us updated projections in terms of enrollment in the community and to our system. And we are projecting over 800 new kids in the next 5 years. This has created packed classrooms, too many transitions for students. And what do we mean by transitions? What we mean is anytime a student moves from one building to the next, that is a transition. And so what we have done as a district is we have tried to fit kids where we can within the facilities we have, rather than create a system where kids should go and how kids should matriculate through our system. And so we have kids that sometimes will transition 4 to 5 different buildings as they work their way through District 115. And then, quite frankly, we just try to make sure that we can conduct programming in any space that we can, and often those are inadequate. We have also been historically one of the lower funded districts in the state. Our state of Illinois has what's called evidence-based funding. So they have a formula to fund school districts around the state. And they come up with a calculation where they would consider us 100% funded or funded at adequacy. There are 27 variables that the state takes into consideration when they think about that funding. Large three of those are number of students who qualify for special education services, the number of students who may receive language acquisition help, and the number of students who would qualify for free or reduced lunch. Those are three large variables that would be considered by the state. But as you can see, with all those variables and in our community, we're funded at 76%. So we are funded 24% below where we should be. And that just essentially means we don't have the resources to make significant infrastructure investments to solve our overcrowding issues. Now, we've talked about the quality of teacher that we have, but the reality is the overcrowding is beginning to really impede our ability to provide a quality education that our kids deserve and that our community expects. We don't have space for student services. We force kids to receive support in hallways or any corner that we can find. And in fact, the picture at the top right is art class being conducted in a cafeteria. Our health offices are too small and we can't properly separate out healthy kids from sick kids. And then our families are quite frankly just turned away from our early childhood program because we just don't have any more room to accommodate more students. Now, I will put our investment as a district and as a community with student and staff safety up against any other district across the state. I think we do an absolute phenomenal job with what we've done to protect our students and staff. However, as we were listening last year, one big security piece still came up as we talked to various people throughout the community. And that's the fact that our high school students have to walk across a busy street multiple times a day. In addition, we know parking lots need some work. And for those of you who are experiencing pickup and drop off lines, mainly at our elementary schools, that you know those are sometimes a safety hazard. And sometimes those lines can get backed up for over a mile and onto a busy highway. Now, we have done a great job of maintaining our buildings. However, we do have some aging buildings, and we have buildings now that have mechanicals and furnitures that are at the age where they need significant renovation or replacement. And so we will have decisions that we would need to make. We have special ed classrooms, in particular our self-contained special education classrooms that are in half classrooms. They're not even in adequate classes for the services that we need to provide those kids. That leaves us sometimes not having accessible bathrooms, which would have kids being changed in the back of the room, and then also not having the necessary therapy and sensory spaces that our kids need for proper development. I think we all agree we have an absolutely fantastic music program. But the reality is we don't have an auditorium. We teach band classes in the hallway. We can't provide the extracurricular activities our students and families are requesting, and our athletic teams don't have enough space for practice. The good news is our community has been collaborating on a plan to solve these challenges. These are some photos from the work that we did last year with the community to begin to problem solve. When we come together to create this facility master plan, this will really be our opportunity to restore pride in our facilities and to make sure that we're giving our students a quality education that they deserve. We will be able to further increase our academic performance while continuing to be innovative with all of the correct extracurricular opportunities that our students want. With an updated facility master plan, we will be able to keep class sizes from growing. This will allow our teachers to be able to spend time, create relationships, and provide the skills our kids need in order to achieve. We will be able to reduce the number of transitions between schools that our kids experience. And all of this together with the new facility master plan will really increase the value for everyone's home in the community. This is really our shot Together, we are building a community-driven plan that not only addresses the overcrowding that our schools face now, but also helps to ensure that we're not putting the community in the same position again in the future. We are entering the final stage of this engagement, which will take us through 2025, and together we will finalize this plan. So what does this round of community engagement look like? Well, as I alluded to earlier, this is the last of 4 public engagement sessions that we've had. We have had 3 in-person sessions. Additionally, we've been executing a public phone survey to seek the community's opinions and on potential individual projects and infrastructure solutions that you will see tonight. We are really trying to actively gather as many responses from the community as we possibly can. So we are going to now break this presentation out into 3 sections. This first section is going to be about a menu of projects. And again, these projects came from options that were derived from the steering committee that the board approved. We have 10 individual projects that we will go through tonight. The second section will be on potential infrastructure solutions, and there will be 5 questions during that section. I call that the would you rather section of the presentation. And then finally, we will end tonight with funding levels and what it looks like from a low funding level, a medium funding level, and a high funding level. As we get into our potential individual projects, you will have an opportunity to submit questions on your Q&A tab. As we go through these individual projects, those questions will be tabulated by our team in the background. And once we run through all 10 of these projects, I will pause and try to answer as many questions as I possibly can from that Q&A tab. Once we're done and answer questions, we are going to ask you to rank these individual projects, and I will give directions and instructions as we get there, as we finish this section. So the first individual project to consider, and again, we want to look at these projects as isolated projects. They are structured the same. We will talk about advantages of the project. We will talk about disadvantages of the project, and then we will give an estimated cost for every individual project for you all to see. So the first individual project is classroom spaces. So we would be able to add additional classrooms that accommodate current and future growth, help reduce student transitions, more space for student health and movement, and we would keep class sizes from growing. The disadvantages from this individual project that we will not be able to achieve this without expansion or new construction of current facilities. The estimated cost of classroom spaces is about $100 million. Music and performing arts spaces. We would look to increase and improve spaces for music and performing arts throughout the district. This includes a new performing arts center at the high school. This is dedicated space and better opportunities for our students in music and theater and the performing arts. The disadvantage to this project, again, and I think you may see a theme as we run through these projects, is that we would not be able to achieve this project without expansion of current facilities or building new construction. The estimated cost for this particular project is about $41 million. Indoor physical education and sports spaces. This individual project would look at gymnasium space at the middle school, a new field hill at the high school. We'd be able to reclaim some gymnasium space at the elementary levels, which would increase student wellness, accommodate year-round athletics, and there's a potential for community use in youth sports. The disadvantage of this individual project, again, we would not be able to achieve this without expansion or new construction, with an estimated cost of about $21 million. Outdoor spaces. Now, there's a lot that goes into outdoor spaces, but we would like this project would look at increased outdoor space for all schools, looking at various student learning, co-curricular, extracurricular, athletics, increased practice space, enhancement to the middle school track, potential increase in parking. So we would look at outdoor space across the district. There is some disadvantage where there may be some potential reduction of green space, and the estimated cost would be about $15.6 million. Student services and supports as an individual project. We would like to optimize and increase space for student services, some of our specialized instruction, also with health services, leading to healthier students, stronger social emotional skills for small group instruction. Disadvantage of this, again, is we won't be able to achieve these spaces without expansion or new construction, with an estimated cost of about $1.6 million. Programming spaces. We like to look at this individual project as expanding and improving programming spaces for early childhood, for accelerated learning, special education, dual language. We have a lot of different programs throughout our district, but this would also look at expanding multi-use and flexible shared spaces like cafeterias to support modern teaching and learning styles by our students. We would not be able to achieve this without expansion or new construction, and the estimated cost for this individual project is about $10.5 million. Teacher and staff support. We want to take a look at increase and improve dedicated spaces for our professional staff. You can see the picture at the top right where we have three professionals. One is trying to eat lunch, one is working, and then one's at a computer. We have shared space like this, and this would allow us to increase and improve that space for our professionals. And this creates stronger relationships between teachers and students. But again, we would not be able to achieve this without expansion or new construction, with an estimated cost of about $1.7 million. Safety. And we talked a little bit about this earlier in the presentation. So the one big safety piece that we're talking about is bringing the high school students over to a one campus solution. So there would no longer be the multiple crossing of the street because we have that two building solution. We cannot achieve this without expansion or new construction, with an estimated cost of about $53 million. Infrastructure and mechanical. So a lot of this is, kind of the behind the scenes that people don't see. But within this individual project, we take a look at investments in our mechanical systems, plumbing, building infrastructure, including and ensuring all early childhood spaces and have bathrooms. We look at playgrounds. We do have buildings that were built in the 1950s. And so if we renovate those, there are some spots within those buildings that we would have to bring to be ADA compliant and fully inclusive for all students. The disadvantages to the infrastructure and mechanicals is that it's very costly, and we certainly would not be able to achieve all the improvements that we would need without expansion or new construction. Estimated cost for this individual project is $15.7 million. Parking and student drop-off. Again, taking a look at improvements to some of our crumbling high school parking lots and a safer and more efficient traffic flow at elementary schools, reducing backups and increasing safety. This project could be costly because of deteriorating asphalt. And also we have lack of space at some of our buildings where we would have to engage in potentially working out, purchasing other property in order to change any traffic flow or logistics. The cost for this individual project is about $16 million. Okay, so we have gone through the 10 individual projects. I do have a few questions from the Q&A tab that I would like to answer regarding some of these projects. I will just start and work through each project as the questions are that pertain to that. So for classroom spaces, which was project number 1, we had a question: does the $100 million include the junior high that you plan to build on the property you purchased? That is a possibility. That is an option for the 100 million, is to build an additional middle school. The new property certainly, again, is an option where we would build that middle school. So that 100 million could include the construction of a new middle school. Another question from the classroom space is what would happen to the freshman academy? We're not sure yet. There are, depending on what the community prioritizes in terms of the final plan, we would have options in terms of the academy. And so the kind of final plan will help us to determine what the future of that building would look like as it pertains to classroom space or outdoor space. And the final question within classroom spaces, does this include creating a new middle school? It certainly could include a new middle school. That is one of the options that is being considered. And that is something that we will take feedback from the community as we, again, finalize that plan, but certainly does have the possibility of including a new middle school. The music and performing arts individual project. We have a question that says, would the 41 million be included in the new high school costs? And a reason why it would cost so much more than a new junior high. Yes, the 41 million would really be focused in on a new performing arts center at the high school. If there is a new middle school that would be built, that would have an auditorium as well. We would want to make sure that that middle school auditorium would be similar to the current auditorium that we have at our current middle school. So we would certainly consider that as we build that middle school, but that funding, that 41 million, primarily would be for the Fine Arts Center at the high school. We have a couple of questions on programming spaces. Are there any plans on putting the dual language program into one building? That's a really good question. And as we look at our different programs, our facility master plan will help determine how we deliver instruction in those programs. So it could be that the dual language program is in one building. It could be that we narrow it to two buildings. We may look at some of our self-contained special education programs. We want to make sure that we're putting the programs in the right buildings and offering a level of consistency for our programs, rather than trying to shift our programs where we have space. And so that will be something that we consider as we look at our facilities. An additional question for programming spaces. Does the cost of classroom space include cost of new teachers, or was that the teacher section? Really good question. So as we look at funding for schools, the money that we're talking about is strictly for capital projects. So it would be strictly for construction and improvement. We have different funding for our operating costs, which would include teachers. And we have looked at our operating costs and what it may or may not take in terms of the number of staff with our plans. And so we have that funding in our operating costs, but the numbers that you see here tonight are strictly for our capital costs. Have there been studies done on when we would plateau from a growth standpoint is another question here. Yeah, the demographer, we were able to go out at least 5 years with projections. We have plans to make sure that we update our demographer studies either every year or every couple of years to make sure that we're staying ahead of the growth. It's certainly hard to project out 15 and 20 years from now. But I think within the next couple of years, we'll have a really, really clean look from 10 to 12 years. But we feel very confident in the next 5 to 7 years and up to 10 years as we look at our student enrollment and the facilities that we would need for that student enrollment. We have one question here in programming spaces that has come up a couple of times. What grades will be in the elementary schools? Is it true that you are considering a kindergarten campus? Really good question. And we will go to answer some of that in the next section. Part of that answer is right now our options look at K-5 elementary schools. And we do have some options that are 1-5 that we will talk about in the next section. So that's a really good question. As we look at student services and support, what year would all of this be completed by? That will depend on, obviously, construction, and we know what happens there, but we would love for our team and to work with the community to be able to come up with language for the referendum that would be on the ballot for March, the March primary. Once we move past the primary referendum, we would begin the design phase. Ultimately, we would love to have construction start in the fall. So we'd really like shovels in the ground then, with a projected impact or change for where this looks by the fall of 28. Again, that's what we'd like to see. Construction will tell us differently, but right now that would be our plan. Another question around student services and support. Again, this is around dual language. I think I've addressed that a little bit, but we certainly will be looking at the programmatic needs of our programs as we look at the facilities and where our facility master plan lands. And teacher, staff, and support. A question that came through on that topic was, does YGS have enough space to support a new kindergarten center? No, it does not. YGS would not have the physical capacity to take on all kindergartners from our district. Under the safety project, we have just a couple of questions. How does adding space to the existing YHS fix all of the traffic problems? You still do not have enough parking on that property. Yes, that's we've heard parking as we were doing our listening sessions, and we are certainly aware of the parking constraints that we have. And so that is part of the outdoor space plan. So depending on where we fall with our facility master plan, we certainly have been looking at ways to create more parking to not only enhance the ability for student parking, but when we have events. And so that is something that we are certainly considering as we think about the outdoor space and then the overall plan. Why have the preventative maintenance costs not been built into yearly budgets to prevent them from growing into a multi-million-dollar project? For example, parking lots. Yep, and HVAC. That's a really good question, and we actually have been addressing those. We have, I think, we do a great job of maintaining our facilities. We do have a yearly maintenance plan that looks at parking lots, that looks at roofs and HVACs. It's just that some of our buildings are at the point now, because of their age, we have to make decisions on significant investments for renovation and replacement, or are they better served being utilized in a different manner? And so we do have yearly maintenance budgeted in, but when you look at some of the major things that have to happen, that doesn't fall within our yearly maintenance budget. But that is an excellent, excellent question. There is a question around the district looking at the highest tax levy in the area across multiple counties and how this impacts taxpayers. We certainly do. We're certainly cognizant of taxes and certainly understand the tax impact on families. We will actually get that into the last section of tonight. So we will be talking about the potential tax impact as we get into the third section of tonight's presentation. The last question around infrastructure mechanicals, are these costs valid today and are likely to increase, or is there some room in these numbers to absorb cost increases? Really good question. These are all estimates at this time, certainly with rates and the economies and things that could impact it. But we have been working with our architect, but we've also been working with a general contractor on estimating and budgeting. So the numbers that we have right now are the most current numbers that we possibly can have for the costs of these projects. But certainly there could be some fluctuation up or down depending on the next several years in terms of our economy. Let's see. There are some other questions that I think probably would be best served, especially if we have the email address associated with that question that we can respond to you and can respond via email with some of these other questions that have popped up. Okay, so now we are going to get into the chance where you can provide us your voice. What we will be doing soon here is that we will be putting into the chat a link for a feedback form. The couple of things with the feedback form is, number one is, once you have opened up the feedback form, please keep it open for the duration of the presentation, we are going to ask you to go back to this feedback form 2 more times because we have 2 more sections. And so once you have the feedback form open, we ask that you please keep it open. What we're asking you to do tonight for this first part is we want you to rank those list of projects. And again, I'll go back to our um, 10 projects that look like this. This is how it will show up. And we are going to ask you to rank those individual projects, and there's the description with the costs, with a 1 through 10, 1 being your highest priority and 10 being the lowest priority. We will ask that you complete and rank every single project. We need all of them ranked in order to be able to take your feedback. You can also only use a number once. So you cannot have 2 number ones or 3 number ones. You must only use a number once, 1 through 10. And then again, what we'll do is we'll put that form in the chat for you, as well as we have a QR code here that if you prefer to do it on your phone, you could do that now. We are going to give you anywhere between 5 and 7 minutes right now to get into that form to rank the individual projects at this time. Again, please keep the form open and please only complete the top part or the first part of this form, as we will talk about the other 2 parts when we move to the other 2 sections. So we'll give you about 5 to 7 minutes right now to go ahead and complete that form. If you did not finish all of the rankings and leaving the form open, you certainly could go back. But I do want to move on to the second section of our presentation, the potential infrastructure solutions. It's kind of the would you rather portion of the presentation. So we will talk about 5 potential infrastructure solutions: reducing student transitions, balanced student transitions, boundary changes, kindergarten, and high school academic wing. Again, if you have questions, please put those in the Q&A tab, and our team will get those onto a sheet that we will take a look at being able to answer once this section is complete. So reducing student transitions. And again, just to reiterate, when we talk about transitions, we're talking about when students have to move from building to building. Some options that we have right now that are under consideration would balance or equalize transitions for our students in our district, but they would not actually reduce the number of student transitions. While other options that we're taking a look at that are more expensive options actually reduce the number of transitions that our students experience as they go through our school. So the community questions that we'll have you ponder is, how important is it to you to reduce the number of student transitions? And in general, would you be willing to spend more to reduce those transitions? The next then is balanced student transitions. Right now, the district has worked hard to keep things fair, but we know that there are some students that have more transitions than others. So we want to see and try to work at balancing those transitions out. And so the question for the community is, if you had to choose, which is more important to you, reducing the overall number of transitions or achieving balance and fairness with all students transitioning the same amount? Boundary changes as a potential infrastructure solution. We understand that boundary changes are a big deal. When we say boundary changes, we are talking about the attendance zones for our schools. We are not talking about the entire district boundary, rather the attendance zones for our different schools. So some options under consideration may require a one-time boundary change to right-size student population in school buildings. We want to try to keep the populations as consistent and keep class sizes consistent throughout the district and achieve our programmatic balance. So the community question to ponder is, if you had to choose, would you favor an option that achieves fewer of the community's desired improvements but does not require a boundary change, or an option that achieves more of the community's desired improvements but does require a boundary change? Kindergarten. And this was asked earlier, and we're talking about it here, is that there are some options that are under consideration that would bring all of our kindergarten students in the district together in a single kindergarten center, while other options would house our kindergarten students in their local attendance K-5 school building. Housing all kindergarten students in a single kindergarten center has its advantages, would be less expensive, but there certainly are busing logistics that would go along with that. Housing kindergarten students in their local K-5 or their attendance zone school would require one fewer transition for students and keep them closer, but would require additions or new construction. So the question for the community is, in general, how willing are you to spend more money to keep kindergartners in their local K-5 attendance school versus busing them to a kindergarten center? And the high school academic wing. We've talked about this a little bit, but currently we have a 2-building solution on either side of Game Farm Road. Some of the improvements desired by the community would require an expansion of the high school to fit all of our high school students. This would increase student safety by reducing the street crossings, improve efficiency by consolidating program. However, the new academic wing would be costly, and again, almost around $50 million. So the community question is, are you willing to spend more to construct a new academic wing at the high school? Or as the district continues to grow, would you prefer programming be split between the two current buildings, even if that is a negative impact on safety? Okay, so we have those 5 potential infrastructure solutions. And now let me address questions that we've had in the Q&A tab. Student transitions. Are you planning to knock down Bristol Grade School was a question that came up. Bristol Grade School has a couple of different options. There are options that reutilizes that space, and there are options where Bristol Grade School does come offline as a school as part of District 115. Another question around reducing student transitions, was the library considered as a kindergarten center or additional classroom space? Many of the services the library offers is not required to be offered by a library. The city can offer many of the non-book related activities through Parks and Rec. We did not consider the library for a kindergarten center. In our options that are draft options that we've considered, Circle Center would be an option for the kindergarten center, as that is the exact middle of our community and our district. And so that really, and also has the space to accommodate all kindergartners in our district. Question under boundary changes. How long would our taxes increase for if we wanted all these changes? We will talk taxes in the next section. But if we were to look at going out to sell bonds in a referendum, we would work with the Board of Education on a 25 to 30 year payback structure of those bonds. We have a question of what would be the plan for YIS. In our options right now, YIS would be converted to either a K5 or a 1-5 building. What are the potential boundary changes? We don't know that yet. It would all depend on the facility master plan and the number of buildings we have. We know that we would certainly hire out a third party to do the planning for any attendance changes, to make sure that it's a neutral party that takes a look at how many students, how many potential students, and what the capacity of those buildings are. So that would be work that we would do down the road once we know what our facility master plan is. We have a question in kindergarten. What about K3 schools? We currently, in our options that we're looking at right now, do not have any K3 schools in the district for this facility master plan. We have a question around kindergarten again. Neighboring districts have gotten rid of their kindergarten centers. Oh, why do we think this would be good? There are various districts that have kindergarten centers. There are districts that have had them for 20 years. There are districts that have had them and gone away from them. Again, there are pluses and minuses. This was an option that was put on the table as a less expensive option to still achieve some of our overcrowding issues. But there certainly are some pros and cons to having kindergartners together in one building. And then there are pros and cons of having them there and busing them there versus having them in their attendance building. And then a couple of for the high school academic wing. Please explain the safety concern because the person asking the question doesn't have any high school students. The big safety concern is that we have our high school students cross the Game Farm Road multiple times throughout the day. Monday through Thursday, it's either 2 to 3 times. And on Friday, it could be up as many as 5 times. That is a busy thoroughfare from 47 to 34. Now, we do have a light that can be pushed to stop traffic, but during the day, we don't always have crossing guards while in between periods. We do have crossing guards before and after school, But that has been looked at and potentially hazardous as having kids cross the road that many times throughout the course of the day. And another question around the high school academic wing. Has anyone considered building a pedestrian bridge over the Game Farm Road for the high school students? That has not been something that has been included in our research and in our current facility master plan options. However, this question has been asked a couple of times, so that will be something that we bring back to our architect to find out the feasibility of what that might look like. Okay, so now we're asking you on that feedback form again to go into the second section for the questions for the potential infrastructure solutions. So again, please go back to that form that was open. We'll give just a few minutes for everybody to be able to complete the second section of that form, and then we will move on to the final section of the presentation. Okay, we'll give everybody just one more minute to finish that second section. Okay, now we'll move on to the third section and the final section of the presentation. And this is the potential funding levels for the facility master plan. We have a low funding level, a medium funding level, and a high funding level. So the low funding level, we would be able to do some of the improvements using borrowed money while maintaining an existing tax rate. So we would be able to borrow approximately $131 million. We would get some improvements, and it does not require a tax increase. So you would see your tax rate stay the same with this low funding level. The medium funding level, we would be able to get more improvements done, borrowing approximately $240 million. And the average tax impact on a median home value in Yorkville of $323,700 would be $449 a year. And the high funding level, we would get all of the improvements that we would need. We would borrow approximately $309 million. And the approximate average tax impact to that median home value would be about $612 a year. So I'm going to wait just a moment to see if there are some questions that run through. Again, I'll run through the funding again. Low funding, borrowing about $131 million, and the tax rate would stay the same. It would not increase. The medium funding level, borrowing about $240 million and getting more improvements done with about a $449 a year increase. And the high funding level, borrowing about 309 million and getting all of our improvements with an average impact of $612 a year. We have a question that has come through. What improvements could we expect at each level? That is what we are actually working on right now. So what we are tabulating are the priorities that the community is telling us through the phone survey and these feedback forms, and being able to figure out what does the community prioritize from projects to put together a final master plan. And then we'll have an idea for costs, and we'll see where the community and how comfortable the community is in terms of that level of funding. Another question is, how many years would it go up at that high rate? That would all be determined based off of our equalized assessed value in terms of your particular home and how that responds to the tax rate. Again, the board would have some options in terms of paying back any debt that we incurred. So there are different plans to pay it back. You could structure it where you have a flat payback over the 25, 30 years. You could structure it where you tier it. So it starts lower and then it increases up. So there are options in terms of the payback method that our district will take. And so that would all come into play in terms of that tax impact. With all of these improvements, how much are property values expected to increase? Really good question. I wish I could predict that, but we certainly know that we are a growing community. We know that we have some industry that's coming to our community. Our equalized assessed value of our district has continually gone up over the last 10 years, and it looks to continue to increase. And so while I don't know the exact rate or the exact value for which homes would increase, all the information and all the data that we're seeing does show that property values will continue to increase in the Yorkville School District. I have a question about, does any of this take into account major businesses like Costco and the data centers? This does not take into consideration those just yet because they have not come online. We don't know the exact tax value of some of those properties. While we do expect those properties to come online, we don't know when they will come online and when they will fully be built out for that EAV or that tax impact. Certainly the board is keeping their eye on that, as well as I, in terms of tax dollars and how we might be able to use those tax dollars in the future. But the rates and everything that you see here do not include some of those new construction, new facilities that are coming to the district. Will we see these plans prior to primaries in March? Yes, we will be able to provide updates on plans as we build these out from this feedback prior to March. I have a question. If no changes, then what is the solution with no additional cost? If we have no additional cost to our tax rate, we will try to take that money and stretch it as far as we can to solve the major issues that our district has with overcrowding and what the community prioritizes. Again, I have another question around data centers that I think we've addressed. And again, if we have not come up with questions, if your email is associated with that question, we certainly will respond. What we'll ask for you now then is to complete the third section on the funding level tonight. We are going to ask you to rank 1 through 4. And the reason that we're asking 1 through 4, because there is an option for you to prioritize no additional funding for schools. So we would want you to rank 1 through 4 in terms of where your support is for funding for our facility master plans. And I will, as people are jumping into our third section, and certainly give you time, I do want to take this time to thank everybody for joining us tonight. This is a collaborative approach and a collaborative project to solve some of our challenges. And so I really appreciate your engagement. I appreciate the questions and the feedback forms. That is going to help drive the next session of work in reporting back out to the Board of Education so that we certainly can, again, create that community-driven plan that we all want, and to help to set us up for the future, for the obstacles that we're seeing. So again, thank you for your time tonight. We really appreciate it, and have a great evening.